Hello, welcome back to DJX Chronicles. It's gonna be, you know, another sitting in bed kind of video, but it's whatever. This one is a cloning experiment. It's an interesting topic. I just kind of have been working on this for quite some time, um, and there've probably been some developments since the first time I wrote this that I didn't talk about. But anyway, I'm getting on with it. Please like and subscribe if you would like to. Has anyone ever wondered what the world would be like if mankind were to cast aside their ethics in an attempt to create new life, almost like Herbert West? However, I am talking about the replication of cells, from individual ones all the way up to complex organisms, and even entire animals in some cases. Which, of course, would include the discussion of cloning humans. Cells can be replicated and maintained pretty easily with the technology that we have access to today. With all the discussion about creating human clones, is it possible to even clone something so complex? And if it were, who would even dare to try it? I realized that doctors do in fact clone individual cells at the time. So we could, but it's not legal, of course. I don't think so anyway. I think there's a bunch of conventions against that. I will do my best to discuss all the information that I could find and will attempt to be as informative as possible. The cloning of humans seems like it's purely science fiction. But the science is there. Claims have already been made that successful human clones were created at some point. I'm not sure whether or not these claims have any grounds in reality. However, some countries have created legislatures against the cloning of humans. So I would say, logically, that these sorts of laws are only in place because humans can, in fact, create clones with the technology that we have. Though it would be a seriously expensive science experiment with a very high margin of error. But also, discuss the ideas of cloning healthy stem cells and other things to help with medical procedures. For example, what if scientists could clone a healthy heart from someone who is looking for a transplant? Or even cloning something like neurons for someone who has dead neurons in the brain. This kind of cell replication for use in medicine is a revolutionary scientific idea. I'm not 100% sure if all of that is possible even, like especially messing with brain neurons, but I mean they do brain surgery, so I don't see why they couldn't copy or replicate certain neurons and chains of neurons. But I digress. I'll be honest. The creation of human clones would definitely make me nervous, and I don't even know if I like the sound of the idea. However, it remains a morbid curiosity in my mind, a wonder. I have met people in my life with neuron issues in their brain that are said to be incurable. But what if someone could, hypothetically, uh, you know, create biological brain neurons or neuron chains or something of the sort, like I had mentioned? What about someone with a defective heart valve? Could someone possibly clone that defective valve and replace it? I don't know. Of course, with that thought in mind, the body could reject such extreme treatments, leading to septic shock and other more harmful effects. So, now I want to quickly discuss why, in my opinion, the cloning of humans could prove a risky game to play. Just think about it, though. Wouldn't creating multiple copies of a single person likely lead to an increased risk of birth defects or something of the sort? Obviously, a human is pretty complex and consists of thousands of cells working together. So, wouldn't a small abnormality in cells act similarly to a cancer with, drastic replications? The continued production of clones would increase the possibilities of defects in the vital organs such as the liver, heart, or brain. As you could expect, certain people have a deep set fear of the possibility of the extinction of humans, so that some people desire to leap ahead in order to substantiate our own species, as well as bringing back other already extinct animals from single strains of DNA or RNA. There are actually a lot of people who see clones as a possible way to substantiate all of humankind if natural conception isn't enough. As far as I can tell, most clones would be created from a cell of the host species, planted in a surrogate mother. The artificial fetus planted in the surrogate would likely lead to an unhealthy birth weight. Even further, if the development of organs were to happen prematurely in any way, you would more than likely have problems with the clone's immune system over time. Birth defects are shockingly common with natural birth. As it is, people are born with holes in their heart or even underdeveloped lungs all the time. And those are not cloned children. I would personally fear a full scale human cloning operation purely because it would likely create even more insane birth defects than what we see now. Obviously, the world would be changed drastically, but I can't really say if that would be for the better or not. I am going to shift away from reality for a moment and discuss some of the science fiction about clones. In Star Wars, of course, the clones were created on Camino, based off of the genetic makeup of the bounty hunter Jango Fett. These embryos are essentially raised in giant test tubes. Their development was accelerated, but it still took many decades to create a whole army of Jango Fett. These clones were perfect replicas of him. Clearly, the science portrayed in the Star Wars series is vastly different from how cloning would be executed in reality. However, they put a lot of thought into the idea, and that adds to the interest, for me anyway. You would have to very carefully select the genetic material that you did choose to clone, because I really feel like that if you were to clone one man who was perfect in almost every way, except for a heart problem, that doesn't affect that man. But this problem would be more greatly noticeable in the clones that are created from it. So just imagine here 1 million clones of that one guy. Let's just say all these clones may grow up, given that the clones could even survive to adulthood. Then, what if the clones with a weakened immune system catch a cold? A human would generally live through this, but the clones with a genetically weaker immune system that could become extremely deadly among the clones created from that genetic makeup. Obviously, researchers have copied plenty of cells, genes, cell, tissue, organisms, and they've even said to have cloned whole animals. In many cases, some of these were fairly recent. If you look at cloning experiments with sheep, like in the case of Dolly the sheep, an egg was taken from a female, and the cells were then separated from the egg, and scientists would then transfer the DNA from an animal's egg cell into the embryo that contains the same genes as the cell donor. Then, that embryo is implanted into a surrogate mother. This did work, though many of these sheep clones either died before birth or died fairly shortly thereafter from health or developmental issues. As I said, we can easily create copies of genes, of segments of DNA. There is therapeutic cloning of tissues in order to replace diseased or injured ones, which can all be done safely in a sanitary laboratory environment. These things I am okay with. Cloning organs in order to help other living humans whose organs aren't so great. I wouldn't be okay with the cloning of entire peoples because of a higher chance of major birth defects, as I described, which would be much more common if you copied that one cell. I am no scientist, obviously, but I have heard and read a lot of things about cloning, both science fiction and actual research results. I don't know all the fancy, sciency kind of terms to use in order to explain myself, but this is purely my opinion, and I may be completely wrong on it. Finally, with the ethical problems aside, the entire process would most likely be flawed, and we would end up in a world full of slightly weaker individuals who are practically identical. I don't know about you, but I'd be afraid of my own creations if I were a scientist practicing cloning experiments of that kind of magnitude. Though I would not be surprised if I suddenly were to learn of some sort of large scale cloning experiment right here in beautiful America. Anyway, but cloning humans would come back to haunt us if we were to continue funding that kind of research. Don't get me wrong, cloning healthy cells to help the sick would be an excellent pursuit if it is done safely. But cloning people is a terrible idea. And don't even get me started on android people. That's a joke, obviously. We have Musk's guys working on that one right now. Please like and subscribe to DJX Chronicles, and I hope to see you next time. Maybe.